Hey guys, welcome back. It is week 3 in the month of May, also known as the month of peace. And do you remember a couple of weeks ago in the month of joy when I said that I found it really ironic that joy was showing up in April because April is my birthday month and joy is the character trait that I struggle with the most? Well, this month, in the month of peace, I find it ironic that the month of peace is showing up right in the middle of this abortion debate in the United States. So this video is being recorded in May of 2019. The governor of Alabama has just signed a very strict abortion law, and the debate between pro-choice and pro-life is igniting and getting louder, and we are all having our discussions and our beliefs and our opinions. So next week, in week 4, we're going to talk about how we are able to bring peace to each other. Because these videos, when we're talking about all of these character traits, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, these are not foo-foo characteristics. As I have been saying all along, character traits show up in the opposite situation. So peace isn't just something on tranquility or lack of tranquility. It's right in the middle of the tension. A peaceful character trait is right in the middle of that debate and right in the middle of that tension. So today what we're going to talk about is who are we bringing to the table when we have these discussions about, abortion and gun control and immigration. Who is it that we are bringing to the table and into the boardroom with us when we engage in these arguments? And what kind of inner peace and inner character do we have when we are engaging each other, and is it healthy? So last week we talked about what destroys inner peace. And I rewrote a couple of things. These are not the same things, but the judge in our head certainly destroys our peace. Worry, comparison with each other of not being enough in some area, whether it's financial or business or personal or whatever. When we feel like we have a lack of control, when things are just really chaotic and we have no control, an unhealthy fear. Certainly there's healthy fear. If there's a snake in front of me, I want to run. That is a healthy fear. But an unhealthy fear is when we get on that spin cycle and we just start going down the drain with all these thoughts about all the bad things that could happen and what's going to happen to us. That destroys our inner peace. Not embracing or fully knowing who we are personally, that's a huge one. And that's probably the main point of this whole video, is that when we don't have a sense of who we are personally and who we are bringing to the table, then we're just on this constant fix-it and trying to be the person so that we don't get made fun of or so that we don't embarrass ourselves. And that is just exhausting. Constantly managing our stuff when we, don't have boundaries and we're putting everything on our plate and we're just busy, and just stressed out, then all we're doing is, it's a very selfish, self-focused way to live life, because we're just managing everything that's on our plate. And then a macro view of life. Macro view of life would be just the street view of just whatever is right in front of us. That's what we're going to handle, and that's what we're doing at the moment. And so the consequence of that is that it prevents emotional intimacy. And emotional intimacy, believe it or not, is in every relationship. It's in our family relationships, with our spouse, with our coworkers, with our neighbors. It's that part of us that either walks in the room with a bunch of walls around us, or that walks in the room that we are open and vulnerable to everybody. And when we don't have this inner peace, it prevents the emotional intimacy that's necessary for good communication. It prevents us being known. It causes us to hide and protect. We don't want to embarrass ourselves. We don't want to make a mistake. We want to, walk in and look like we know what we're doing when we own the room. Another consequence is pretense. We're always living, you get into an argument with someone, and then as soon as you get out of the car, you're like, hey, how's it going? Everything's nice. We pretend that we're doing better than we are. It prevents trust, which is huge for team building, and certainly this national discussion that's going on. It has a sense of arrogance, lack of humility, and it prevents this overall success and fulfillment in our lives. And so I also showed you last week where this stuff comes from. And I gave you this chart with the experiences, thoughts, beliefs, behaviors, and consequences, and then what God says about that. And I drew this picture this week of this flower. We can have these This is what we bring to the table. And if we don't pay attention to this, this is the fruit, but down here is the roots of our behavior. So if up here is the fruit, if we're defensive, or if we're have some sort of behavior that is causing us to not get the job or not to be able to move forward in life, we can say to ourselves, okay, I'm going to cut that behavior down, right? I'm just going to cut it right off at the ground level. I'm not going to eat so much so I can gain weight. I'm not going to talk so much. I'm not going to or I am going to do X, Y, and Z. We can try and manage our behaviors by just chopping that flour down. But what happens is that the flour might be gone, but we still have all these roots. And these roots of our behavior are the experiences that we've had, and the thoughts, beliefs, and the behaviors and the consequences. All of that is internalized based on these experiences. That's what we're bringing to the table. Everywhere we go, there we are. And so if we can't have inner peace, if we don't go back and take a look at this, and if we can't go back and change what somebody said or what we did, but we can go back to that experience, feel the pain that it caused us, and then rewire our brains to have different thoughts and beliefs and therefore behaviors. Because what brings inner peace is vulnerability. We can't be vulnerable if we're hiding, if we're still trying to massage that wound and we're still trying to protect ourselves. It is impossible to be vulnerable. And if we're not vulnerable, it is impossible to have trust. And if there's no trust, there's no healthy conflict. We can't talk to each other. We can't listen to each other. Being vulnerable and having a proper integration of our personal character, which means that I can accept the good and bad in me, and I can list out my weaknesses, I can list out my strengths, my faults, I can list the pros and cons on my side of the argument without worrying about if I'm going to lose or if I'm going to win, right? This is all being open and able to receive love and grace and forgiveness and mercy. If I don't have that in me, I can't give it to you. And especially when we're talking about these topics like gun control and abortion and immigration, and there's all these sides are coming in with all this different stuff. Part of the reason why these situations don't get resolved is because we're not being vulnerable, and we're not really talking about, okay, well, if someone doesn't have an abortion, then who's going to pay the expenses so that they don't have to go on welfare? Who's going to babysit so they can stay in school? Who's going to adopt the baby? Who is going to step in to help? We have this tendency to be like, nope, don't do that. But we're not being vulnerable enough to understand that there are other situations and other circumstances. Now, I'm not saying that it's right to do that. I'm saying that we're not listening to each other, and we're not being, and even on the news, like there's the one side or the other, right? That whether it's Republican or Democrat or pro-life or pro-choice or whatever the topic is, you don't see a television show, and if you do see one, put it in the comments and let us know, that is able to say, yeah, here's the pros and cons of our side of the argument. Let me hear the pros and cons of your side of the argument. And let's have a common goal, and let's talk about those pros and cons without shaming each other, without condemning each other, without degrading each other, without calling each other stupid. Because this is so complicated. So complicated. And if we can't be vulnerable in our own position and with our own weaknesses and with our own faults, then I'm not able to let you to be vulnerable with your weaknesses and your faults. I'm going to attack you, right? It's scary to be vulnerable because what that means is we're exposing ourselves, and if we can't be vulnerable, then what we're doing is like we're walking around like this and we're hiding. And we're coming to the table of the discussion, but we're looking through the lens of, okay, I need my inner soul to be at peace, and everything is being filtered through this, and I'm not able to be a team player because I'm just looking for my wounds to be satisfied and my peace to be satisfied, and damn everything else, because I need to get this fixed first. This is our job to fix these lenses here, so that we can work